Hello everyone. This is a project that I've been working on. It's a turntable for my SLA 3D printer to cure prints with. I wasn't really impressed with anything I found on Amazon, so since I have a 3D printer, I decided to make my own. You can see it's a relatively simple design and it has all cheap components. It's just a geared DC 30 RPM motor with a bearing and some 3D printed components. Here's a view of the motor. It has a spur gear that rides on the inside of the rotary table, which is also a large gear. Here you can see it just uses one bearing with a screw through the center and a cover plate to hold the rotary table and allow it to rotate. So I screwed the motor mount to a 2x6 piece of wood that I had in the garage. This is a scrap piece. And I soldered two silicone wires to the bottom of the motor and put the spur gear on the top. This is the rotary table. I put some slots in it to reduce the weight and the material that was used. This is the base of the rotary table. I printed it with the small end down, large end up. It's a little rough on the top and I had a little bit of warping. It's a new material for me, so I'm still getting the hang of it. Um, there's some square nuts underneath. They'll be used later when we're assembling. They fit into nice little slots. This flange plate allows me to reduce the complexity and only use one bearing to turn this rotary table. And this is a basic 6903 bearing. They're pretty cheap. So the key to assembling this is to make sure that you put the flange plate on before the bearing. And what you see here is just a cover plate. Just make sure that the bearing doesn't come off the bottom of the rotary table. So it just has a square nut that's mounted on the inside, and I'll tighten it from the top here with the screw just for the final tight. Check it with a quick spin, everything looks like it's moving smoothly. So I'll mount the base to this 2x6 here. Now it has a slot that it locates in. It's a little tricky here, but so it should sit like that. That's so that it has proper spacing from the edge of the gear in the bottom of the rotary table. So I'm just going to put 3 screws into the base to hold it down to the 2x6, and you can use anything. You don't have to use this 2x6. So with the magic of editing, I connected the base. So with the base secure, it's time to put the rotary table into the base. So you simply push the bearing down into the bore on the base and make sure that you have an opening in the rotary table to reach the screws that are on the flange. So that is it for assembling the actual rotary table part. So my UV light is a little bit larger, so I'm going to screw a 2x4 to the side of the base like this. And I'm going to use this to mount the bottom bracket of the UV light. If you're using an LED strip, you might not even have to do this step, and you might be able to just mount the LED strip inside of the cover that you're going to put over this assembly. So the UV light that I'm going to be using with this assembly is a 60 watt 6 bulb UV light. It has an on-off switch on the wire, and all of these parts will be listed in the description so that you can find them yourself. So here, I'm just removing the bracket so that I can place it on top of the 2x4. I'll put the lengths of the wood that I used in the description as well. These are just 2 scrap pieces that I had in the garage that looked about right. I know that they're not pretty, but they're functional, and that's really all I'm concerned about with this project. To power the rotary table motor, I just used a screw-on barrel jack connector, and I'm going to connect this up to your basic 5 volt wall wart power supply. To make this so that you don't have to disconnect and reconnect every time, you could put an on-off switch in line with the wire. So after you plug the transformer in, it takes a quick second, but the rotary table eventually comes on and it's spinning pretty good. Now I know you're not going to want to put a lot of weight on this rotary table. It doesn't have supports all the way around the edge, but for SLA prints to be cured, I mean, this is plenty strong. And I'll put a pair of pliers on it just so you can see it doesn't pitch or roll to the side whenever weight is over the unsupported edge. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not overly concerned about the aesthetics, so for my enclosure, I'm just going to do a cardboard box lined with tinfoil on the bottom and top. And this is what the complete assembly looks like. Thanks. If you enjoyed watching, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll make more content like this in the future. Thanks.